Hello and good morning, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Advance Your Wealth with Homer Smith. I'm your host, Ryan Ruff, and joined as always by really our star of the show, Homer Smith, our private wealth advisor of Konvergent Wealth Partners. Homer, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so Homer, the gist of our show, just so our audience, is aware, basically, each month we're going to be tackling a really complex financial topic. We're going to have you tap into your 18 years worth of industry experience and kind of root through the weeds of some of these complex topics so that way you, our audience, don't have to be bogged down by all of this financial information and literacy. We want to simplify some of these things for you, and Homer is just the guy to do it. So, Homer, I think one of the best ways for us to kind of get flowing and to start off our show here on the very first one is to give our audience a little bit of a background in terms of what your 18 years in the industry experience looks like and maybe some of those trials and tribulations you've gone through to being with Konvergent Wealth Partners and beyond.
Yeah. Again, thanks for hosting today, and excited to share some insights. So, actually, just past 19 years in the business now. I actually
Awesome.
started my career in the week of 9/11, 2001. So, as you can imagine, a pretty challenging time to start your career, really in any industry, but especially ours. I think the market went down for the first about 18 months of my career. But what I discovered early on in my career is one thing I was really good at was helping clients really simplify things, really quiet the noise around everything going on with them financially, and helping them really focus on what was most important to them. So through all the madness of 9/11 and the dot-com bubble bursting, I built my business pretty quickly in the Seattle area, and then ultimately decided I liked coaching and helping other advisors do the same thing. So I went into the management route for a period of time, and ended up going out to Hawaii in 2007 and took over a branch of about 25 advisors and staff in Hawaii right as the 2008 crisis hit. And instead of now focusing on helping my clients through that, I was focused on helping 25 advisors and staff and their families figure out how to grow their business in such a challenging time. So kind of two big pivots in my career happened at pretty interesting times in the markets in our economy. That's about a few years of that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going, Homer.
Yeah, no. I say after a few years of that, I realized what I really missed, though, was working with individual clients. And so ended up moving back to the Pacific Northwest and restarted my practice. And quickly on in that process, realized that I really enjoyed working with people I could make a meaningful difference for. And one of those types of clients were business owners. And so I also then went down the path of getting an exit planning designation and also buying a growth strategy firm. And so I started working with private business owners, helping them do this full growth to exit process, as well as working with our top individual clients as well. And what I learned in that process was our industry, the wealth management industry, needed a lot of that as well. And so I ended up purchasing 7 other practices and helping them implement many of the things I was learning, what would be valuable for private business owners. And then in the last year or so, realized, what I really, again, loved doing was instead of growing other people's businesses, I really wanted to work with my individual clients again and help the individual business owners rather than other financial advisors grow their businesses. And so I started Konvergent Wealth Partners just over a year ago. So it was November 8th, 2019, we started Konvergent Wealth Partners. So that's kind of brought us to here in terms of where I've been at with the career up to this point.
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, congratulations on that 1-year mark. That's obviously a great milestone to hit. Well, Homer, this financial literacy, financial planning, it's a conversation of dollars and cents a lot of the time. And I feel like, a lot of people can get lost in those dollars and cents when in reality, the conversation really is about the individual. It's about their goals, what they want to achieve with those dollars and cents in life. And boy, if there ever wasn't a great time to talk about what we're going to be diving into today, the topic of a stress test. It's something that is a little unfamiliar for many people, but it's something that a lot of it should be on the radar of a lot of people. I think you would be, it'd be fair to say. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's dive into this topic here, Homer. And I think the best way to really start with it is, just taking a step back and looking at everything that's going on in our political and economic landscape right now, whether it's the COVID-19 virus, whether it's, the turmoil and tumultuous time that the political election, our presidential election has thrown into our country. There's a lot of uncertainty right now in our country, and obviously that uncertainty translates to the markets and translates to how people are going to, move and shift their money. So, there are a lot of affluent families out there that have, estates, and they're wondering what that best decision is to do with their money moving forward, given all of this uncertainty. So I think the best place to start is talking about what it is people can do right now to protect their estate and to protect their money.
Yeah, and first off, again, thanks, Ryan, for joining me today to discuss what I think is this very critical topic, given what we're going through right now. So I believe the most important step is to first start by evaluating your current financial solutions, making sure that they're on track to generate the financial results that you want and expect. Whether it's been a significant change in your financial situation over the last year, or maybe a change within your family, or just simply enough time has passed where tax laws have changed, estate planning laws have changed. We find that there's often critical mistakes and a lot of missed opportunities as we go through this process with our clients. Now, I know the term stress test can often have some negative connotations to it, but given what's going on right now, I think it's pretty critically important that everybody be stress testing their financial decisions. And, up until recently, this whole idea of stress testing, especially in the wealth management world, was really reserved for just the most wealthy. But with technology and the democratization of many of the tools and solutions, successful families and business owners need to be taking advantage of this process now as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, stress testing can get a little bit of this negative rep or rep, but it does sound like it's a necessary process. It's something that people should be considering, and not just something that the upper echelon of wealth should be focusing on. Anybody can. So why exactly, when you dive into the details of this, why is it such a valuable process, for these affluent families to be dealing with right now, given the uncertainty of COVID, of the uncertainty of the outcomes and repercussions of the election, and, pick your poison at this point?
Yeah, stress testing really is valuable for anyone who has a complex financial situation, or really anybody who just wants to make sure they're making smart financial decisions given the challenging economy that we're in. This process right now is critically important, given everything going on. People are worried about their financial situation. They're concerned about the future of their business. And this process really gives us an opportunity to deliver a lot more clarity, a lot more peace of mind, to know that are the decisions you're making right now keeping you on track for your goals? And if not, what are some key steps and solutions you can implement right now to get you back on track?
So stress testing can be a cumbersome topic. There's a lot of ways it can be applied and focused on. So what, in your opinion, what are kind of the three main ways that this test can be utilized?
Yeah, so here are the three ways we utilize stress testing. First, it's important just to test your current financial plan to make sure that it's going to deliver the results that you want and expect. Another area that we use this for is testing an existing product, service, solution that you might be putting in place, and identify all the different outcomes that might be possible if you were to implement it. And then finally, it's looking at opportunities for improvements or enhancements to existing strategies that you might already have in place, because there's often things that get missed with that. And so, and this works whether it's for your individual, personal financial planning, or whether it's evaluating your business. It works well in both of those scenarios.
Homer, there could be people that are out there right now that have never even heard the word stress test applied to their finances, that are listening or watching right now. And could you give me an example, and this could be a real life example or even a hypothetical example of why what maybe prompted somebody to come in and see you for a stress test?
Yeah, so when we do our stress testing process, we do look at the entire picture of a client's financial situation or within their business. But in particular, one that we've been really focused on here at year end is tax planning. Now, whether that is, tax laws changing that we need to evaluate the impact on a portfolio or on an overall financial plan, or whether this year they might have received a significant amount of restricted stock that all vested at once, or they've sold their business and now they've got this significant amount of liquidity, and with that, a significant amount of tax implications to that. So our process is to look at every possible strategy around taxes to identify where we can help them mitigate those taxes. But importantly with that, though, is never taking our eye off the ball of what their most important goals are. So we want to make sure that any strategies or solutions we're implementing still keep them on track for their goals and are in alignment with their goals.
So, it obviously it brings that conversation back to goals. Really what people want to do with their money and what they're striving to do. Yes, you got to pay your bills. You got to get the groceries taken care of. There are all these day to day, month to month finances, but in reality, we've all got that thing in the back of our mind that we want to get to. Whether it's the vacation home, the boat that you've always talked about, that material object that or retirement even that you're trying to save for. So let's shift a little bit. And how about could you throw me an example of a stress test that maybe you have conducted where you really saved somebody from making a mistake? I mean, they didn't know that they were going to make the mistake. You saw it right there in the numbers on paper. And do you have an example that you'd be able to share of somebody that you had helped out?
Yeah, we're actually in the process of doing a stress test for a business owner right now who's planning to sell his business to a private equity group. And the time frame that he wants to get this completed in is very short. And
Okay.
so we've been brought in to really look at and make sure that he's not making mistakes and that he ultimately gets the value out of the business that he wants. And our process for business owners is that we look at 18 different drivers within their business that impact the operations and impact the value. So my role really for him is making sure we identify where can we highlight the best parts of his business, as well as where do we know we might have to defend the value of that business to ultimately make sure that he gets the best value and the value that he wants and needs out of that business. And then in conjunction with that, we're at the year end here. There's tax planning going on, and so I'm working with his other professionals, the CPAs and attorneys, to put an optimal blueprint together as well to mitigate taxes.
And in your conversations with that business owner, what's his or her reactions to some of these more complex topics that you're throwing at them that they might even be overwhelmed with in the moment? What's their raw reaction to some of this?
Yeah, it's really, in this case, it's particular to a business owner. And so they really didn't fully understand all of the things that that private equity group
Sure.
might be looking at in terms of how they were going to evaluate the business and where they might be honing in on from a negotiation standpoint. So
Hmm.
it was nice to point out a couple areas that he maybe wasn't aware of that we were going to have to defend for him. And then also around the tax planning arena, with such a big transaction, he wasn't really aware of all of the tax implications and the ideas that might be out there to help reduce some of those taxes. And
Hmm.
so he's very excited to identify where those might fit in for him and where we could mitigate some of those taxes.
Well, when it comes to stress testing, it sounds like there are a ton of elements at play. And depending on where you get the stress test done, who you're working with as a business owner, can really, dictate potentially the future of your company. So that being said, what are some of the keys to making sure that a stress test is done well?
Yeah. In order to do a stress test well, you really need to get a deep understanding of our clients. So their
Hmm.
values, their goals, the family dynamics. And what I see too often in our industry is wealth managers jump to solutions too quickly. It's exciting to identify a complex tax solution that's going to deliver big results for the client.
Hmm.
But what I also find is oftentimes not every client is interested in overcomplicating their lives with these types of strategies.
Right.
So it's first most important to dig deep, quiet the noise, really understand what's most important to them so we can make sure anything that we're bringing to the table from a strategy or solution standpoint is really in alignment with what's most important to them.
And it again, once more, it comes back to that human element, and when it comes to not only just stress testing, but really, your operations as a financial advisor and a private wealth advisor. Could you tell me, maybe dive in a little bit more as to maybe even your process when you sit down and you're chatting with somebody, and this maybe it's a company process, maybe it's just a homer process of how you navigate that initial conversation with somebody to figure out what their goals are like and what they want out of life, and why is that important to not just obviously to get a grasp of what you're trying to understand with this client, but why do you think it's important for the client, to have somebody on the other side of the table asking them about what they want out of life?
Yeah, in the stress testing process and really our process in general, the human element is critical.
Hmm.
Uh, we work extremely hard to get to know everything and everyone that's important to our clients and everything and everyone that's going to be affected by the financial decisions that our clients make. And so, this process allows us to really identify if there are gaps in terms of what is most important to our clients and what their current wealth plan calls for. So, without that human element, without really getting that deep understanding of what's most important to them, we'd never be able to identify if there are those gaps there existing within their current wealth plan.
So it seems like, knowing your client's goals and what they want to achieve with their money is obviously very critical for not only conducting the stress test, but even more so in some of the other realms of, financial advising and planning. So how do you personally like to get to the heart of the client's goals and really understand what's important to them? Is there a series of questions you ask? Is it, do you try and, connect with them on a personal level? Do you have a strategy when it comes to that?
Yeah, for us, what's most important at the beginning of this process is understanding the values that our clients have. And
Right.
that allows us to know whether our clients are living in alignment. And so that's
Hmm.
really what we focus on at the beginning. So we take our clients through a values exercise where they take a lot of time and focus on identifying what's most important to them. And then for our couples, we bring them together into, we start that process separately. We bring them together and we identify where are their differences, because there often are
Hmm.
with spouses. They have differing values and what they think are important. But we really home in on what are the agreements
Hmm.
and help them identify what are their top family values that are going to drive their decision making as a family unit going forward. And
Sure.
that step is yeah, that step is so critical because, as I already mentioned, it's really difficult to identify whether a solution that we might be presenting or a goal a client is pointing out to us really is in alignment with what's most important to them. And so, without that step first, we can't really get into the rest of the process from there. So,
Right. And it sounds like I know we've got a graphic that we can bring up on screen in a moment, but it sounds like it really is kind of a four-step process that you guys utilize when going through this stress testing. And it all starts with pretty much profiling.
yeah, so once we have the values, so that's
Hmm.
the kind of the pre-step, it then goes into profiling. So we're going to dive deep, understand their goals, understand the things that they're looking to accomplish. From there, we're going to look at all of their existing financial solutions that they already have in place, and we're going to test them. Are they working well? What are the current costs? What's the structure of those? And then we're going to look at potential alternatives. So, are there ways that we can bring enhancements and things to better optimize the overall strategy that they have in place? And then once we have those pieces together, then we're going to make recommendations on, now that we know their values, we know their goals, and now we know the steps they're going to need to put in place to achieve those
Hmm.
goals. What are going to be the best solutions to ultimately get them to their ultimate goals that they're trying to achieve?
So, we've been discussing a little bit of, about stress testing and how it really is commonly used by, that upper echelon, the super rich people with a net worth of maybe even $500 million or more. And they have obviously a tremendous access to expertise, to people like you who can help them through this path. So, is there any way you could share with us maybe a lesson or two that can be learned, when through a group of people when it comes to, the topic of stress testing? Are there any lessons learned that you, maybe personal or professional, that you've learned?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we can learn an amazing amount of stuff from our clients
Sure.
every single day. So a couple of the ones that I can think of, at first, is around just this whole importance of stress testing and identifying, little problems that appear to be not that significant at the beginning,
Hmm.
that oftentimes can turn into the things that prevent our clients from achieving their goals. So the stress testing process is so important to that, to make sure we're identifying those problems early on and preventing them from becoming bigger challenges to their goals down the road. And the second one is really around this whole idea that it's very often not their strategies or solutions that are preventing them from reaching their goals. That is that human element. It's poor communication. It's wires getting crossed. It's clients forgetting to focus on their values when they're making their financial decisions. So it's those two things I think that are most important, is really just taking that step and going through the stress testing process to make sure you're not making those mistakes. And then two, really focusing on the communication with your family and making sure your goals are aligned with your values.
Homer, you bring up a really good point with communication. I mean, obviously, it's vital in so many facets of life, but when it comes to finances, finances are that black and white thing that, sometimes it's taboo and people don't want to talk about it. So, when it comes to that element of communication, do you have you had instances where a client comes in and you've got to break down their false beliefs and rebuild, a knowledge of understanding their finances?
To some extent, yes. I mean, I think because of our approach, because we start with their values and really helping them understand that, it allows us to get permission from them to be able to
Hmm.
point out when they're not living in alignment. And so it's not us telling them that they're doing something wrong. It's us helping them understand their own values and whether they're living in alignment. So
Right.
again, I think that's an important piece. Is we're not kind of talking down to them about this process. Really, it's
Sure.
really about us helping point out to them what they've told us is important and whether they're doing the things that align with that.
Exactly, because you can say, hey, if you want the boat and you want the house on the on the lake, the decisions that you're making are not leading towards it. So you're able to not necessarily leverage, but you're able to work with them and show them that, hey, here's the path to achieve what you want. I totally understand that. And I think for anybody listening or anybody watching at the moment, I think maybe the question that's in the back of our heads is, what does this appointment look like? If I was to come to Convergent Wealth Partners and sit down with you today, Homer, and we were to go through this process, could you walk us through today, what that stress test experience might look and feel like from the client's perspective?
Yeah, first and foremost, our process is all about what's most important to the client.
Sure.
There's no cookie cutter approach to wealth management, especially here at Convergent Wealth Partners.
Mm-hmm.
And so our process, is going to start with those values. So we're going to make sure we understand what their values are. Then we're going to dive into their goals, and it's not just their personal goals, but we're going to talk about their goals for their business or their professional world. But we're also going to talk about goals for their family and goals for the community, and maybe even goals for the world at large, if that's something that's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to dive into relationships. So we're going to understand who are all the people that are going to be impacted by the financial decisions and the ultimate achievement of their goals. We want to know everybody involved that we're going to need to be working with in the big picture here. And then we're obviously going to talk about finances. We're going to look at the current structure of their entire financial situation, and again, test that and dive into, how did you make those decisions? How did you get to the point where you're at today, to really get a good understanding of the process they took up to this point. Then we'll dive into the professionals they're working with. Who are their other important professionals in their lives? What's working well in those relationships, and maybe what's not working well in those relationships. Mm-hmm. And then finally, we're going to dive deep on their interests and hobbies and things that, what are the things they like to do day to day? What are the big vacations they want to achieve? What are some of those, lifestyle things that they want to accomplish as well? And really bring all of that together. And the goal of this meeting really is, our hope is our clients are talking 80 to 90% of that meeting. Mm-hmm. Our job really is just to listen and really get a deep understanding of what's most important to them.
So in this listening process, obviously, the last thing you guys are doing is just skimming the surface. You're getting into the weeds in every last facet of the individual's life, because it's through that you're able to make that educated assessment and that educated decision on what to do with those finances moving forward and what the value of that stress test really looks like. So then, really, to tie it all up here at the end, Homer, I'm the client. We just met. We had our stress test. What do I take home? What am I receiving as I walk out the door at the end of the day?
Yeah, our stress testing process is going to deliver a pretty detailed analysis of the entire financial picture for our clients and prospective clients. So we're going to touch on all facets of their financial world. They're going to get an output of the values exercise, and they're going to know, a better understanding of what's most important to them. But then we're also going to deliver an analysis of their investments. Again, same thing, the current structure, where there might be gaps and opportunities, an assessment of their retirement plan and how on track they are if they're not quite retired yet. And then we're going to dive into some advanced planning areas. Again, look at tax planning, estate planning, and look at asset protection planning, and just make sure that we've identified whether there's gaps and opportunities there. And then at the end of the day, we're going to identify what solutions that they need to implement to get themselves on track. But we're also going to identify, maybe they're already doing all of the right things. And we're going to be honest with them about, hey, you actually might be on track and there's nothing that you need to change. And so that's an important step in our process that we really only want to work with people we can make a meaningful difference on. We're not going to try to convince somebody to implement strategies just because we want to work with them. And the same thing on the business owner end. So that business owner is going to get a extremely detailed analysis and assessment of their business and a really deep analysis of the 18 drivers of value and operational performance within their business. And they're going to know, what are the gaps? Where can I improve the value? How can I get to a point of creating predictable profits and cash flow? How can I make sure I'm getting to a level of sustainable growth? And ultimately, what is it going to take for me to get to this defendable equity value in my business over time as well?
Well, a deep dive says it all, Homer, and it really sounds like the individuals that can benefit from this process of a stress test could be anybody in any way, shape, or form. You're able to more or less audit their life and look at every last facet of how they're spending money, how they're looking at their business. It's really a comprehensive and complex testing process that you guys go through that ultimately ends up being, of course, beneficial for the client, whole reason that they walked in through the door. So if there's anybody out there listening or watching right now and they're thinking, hey, this concept of a stress test sounds pretty good, and I maybe should look into doing this. Well, if you're interested in that and you want to learn a little bit more about how to better position yourself or your wealth for that matter, you can certainly seek help from the guys like Homer over at Konvergent Wealth Partners, and you can visit www.convergentwealth.com today. But Homer, that really does it for our show today. So I thank you for jumping on board for this inaugural episode.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And to Ryan's point as well, on the website, we've got an immense amount of material that's downloadable, for free. So just lots of information related to some of these topics that we've covered today, and also an ability just to go ahead and schedule some time if you just want to, find out if this might be a process that makes sense for you. So yeah, I would love to talk with you if this is something that makes sense for you. So yeah, thank you all for joining us today.
Well, we're going to be having a new episode coming in the month of December, addressing a new complex topic, and we'll share that topic with you on the Konvergent Wealth Partners Facebook page as well as the website. But until then, for Homer Smith, I'm Ryan Ruff. Thank you for joining us for the inaugural episode of Advance Your Wealth. We'll see you back here next month. Have a good one.